So what I'm going to talk about is MRSO, the Managed Router Service Offering. I know a lot of you guys are already pretty technically adept. You know what a router is, but I'm just going to give a quick review of what a router is before we actually talk about the service that SDN offers for the routers. So what a router is, it's really just a device that sits on your network that connects at least a minimum of two separate networks together. Generally, if you have a router, you have multiple remote locations across multiple cities, and you need to get those cities all talking together so one site can get back to the main site where all your servers and data resides. But in larger and more complicated networks, you might have multiple paths to reach a particular network. So once you start getting multiple paths to reach a location, your routing starts to become very, very complicated. So you want to make sure that your backup paths are operational, and if your primary path fails, you want your data to be able to go over to your backup path. So that's what a router does, is gets the data packets to where they need to go across all of your links that are available. But routers can be used for other services just beyond passing data packets. They can become an actual firewall. I wouldn't recommend it to be a firewall, but a router can be a firewall. It just doesn't have the advanced features that Chad and Amos have been talking about, the deep packet inspection. A router just can't do that. But in certain situations, a router as a firewall is better than nothing. But it can also be used for caching. So you might have data that gets transmitted between two locations quite often. So instead of having that data go across the link, the router can direct that traffic to a caching server. So you can pull the data from a caching server instead of having to go across the WAN links to reach that data. Probably the biggest service beyond routing packets that a router does is to connect to your actual voice system, to be able to do voice over IP. So the router can connect directly to your voice lines, to your PBXs, to converge your networks together. So you don't have to have a separate data network, you don't have to have a separate voice network. They can all be on one via the use of a router. What does a router look like? In network drawings and Visio, you'll see it as a hockey puck, which in a couple of the frames showing up, I'll show a network diagram and how the routers all work together and connect those multiple networks together. In the real world, they're just a square box, just some metal, a couple connectors, a few lights. They're pretty ho-hum. There's not a lot to a router as far as what it looks like. But here's an actual network drawing. We have a bunch of hockey pucks that connect all of these separate networks together so they can communicate amongst each other. But the main design goal here, which we can start talking about to where the routers, the configuration starts to get quite complicated, is we have a location in Rapid City, we have one in Sioux Falls, we have one down in Omaha. They're all connected via the SDN MPLS network. They also have an SDN point-to-point circuit between Rapid City and Sioux Falls. And the main goal of this design was to have the replication networks at Rapid City and the replication network at Sioux Falls to where when everything is operational, the replication traffic should go across this point-to-point circuit. So the routers have to be configured to know that this replication network in Rapid City, when it needs to talk to Sioux Falls, it should go across the point-to-point circuit. But for other data transfers and other voice over IP transfers, when Rapid City needs to talk to Sioux Falls or Rapid City to Omaha, that traffic should go across the MPLS network to where Rapid City would go across the SDN MPLS network to reach Omaha. Omaha would go back to Rapid City across the MPLS network. But in the event, in this particular customer, if the main MPLS connection at Rapid City should fail, when Rapid City needs to talk to Omaha, we want that traffic to go across the point-to-point circuit, which in normal operation, only the replication data should be going across that link. But if that main MPLS link in Rapid City should fail, the routers are configured, they'll dynamically know that when Rapid City needs to talk to Omaha, it should go across the point-to-point to Sioux Falls, go out the Sioux Falls MPLS connection to Omaha, and then when Omaha needs to go back, it takes the same path through Sioux Falls across the point-to-point. But as soon as the Rapid City link comes back up, we want Rapid City to talk to Omaha across the MPLS network. So the short of it is those routers, they just don't know that automatically by taking them out of the box and plugging them in. They have to be configured to where you define those rules, the configuration, to where the replication traffic goes across the point-to-point, but everything else goes across the MPLS network. So it gets to be quite a complicated configuration. So what is MRSO? It's just an acronym that SDN came up with. It's not an industry acronym by any means. It stands for Managed Router Service Offering. It's a service where SDN, we're totally responsible. We own the routers. We configure the routers to make the network work like we talked about in the previous slide. We manage the routers, we monitor the routers. We actually own them. We've been offering this service for about 5 years now. We noticed that people were getting wide area circuits from SDN, but they didn't have necessarily the skill set or the desire to configure the routers. So SDN, we started to tie the managed router into our wide area offerings. We have customers that have a single router all the way up to 60 routers. We have customers that have real basic network needs to where there's one way into the location and one way out of the location. There's not multiple paths. But then we have more complex configurations like we showed in the earlier slide to where there's multiple links to reach a site. We have other people like Chad had talked about that encryption you should start looking at. We have some people that are encrypting the data across the MPLS network. So we actually, the SDN staff, we configure the MRSO routers to do that encryption. And we also have other customers with complex internet routing. We have one customer in Minnesota that has 3 cities that have 400 meg of internet at each location. Those are managed routers that SDN is responsible for. But why do customers purchase MRSO? They generally do it because they don't have the networking skill set or they don't have the time to be able to figure out how do I configure the routers to do all that stuff that I was talking about, to use the multiple paths that the network has. They just don't have the time or the staff to do it. Once you have a router configured, you generally don't change the configuration much. It's pretty stagnant configuration, but they're very critical devices. I mean, if your router fails, that city is dead in the water. They can't get back to the servers and the data. So it's a very important component, even though the configuration might not change. If they go down, it's a bad day for you. So SDN, with our MRSO, will monitor those routers 24/7 via our network surveillance staff. So we'll know when the router goes down. We'll have staff available 24/7 to be able to fix them and get you up and going again. We're also responsible for sparing the hardware. So if you do have a hardware failure, we have the equipment at SDN to where we can get a guy out there, ship the router out to you, and get it replaced and get you up and working in a short period of time. We're responsible for the yearly maintenance fees. We handle all the SmartNet. We do Cisco routers, so we have all of our routers smart netted, so we can make sure that we update the code to fix any security vulnerabilities that you might have with your router. It's SDN's responsibility to make sure that that hardware and software is all backed up. We also have customers that they want to have reporting on their routers. They want to know what their utilization is. They want to know what their errors are on their interfaces. So we utilize SolarWinds, so you don't have to purchase a network management software. That's part of the MRSO package. So what you'll get, this is a sample portal view that you can log into, and you can put a trouble ticket in via the web page. You can generate your reports, look at your utilizations. So some of the things you can see is the interface utilizations. This is just a subset of what you can see, but you can see this particular router, there was 4 interfaces. You can see what the utilization is, receive, transmit. You can see your CPU load. You can see your buffers. You can get down, this is for a particular interface on that router. You can see what the utilization was at a specific date and time. So if you're having some problems at a particular date or time, you can go back, you can look at these reports, see if maybe the problem was due to high utilization. So it's just another tool you can use for troubleshooting. We have more and more people, they're doing voice over IP, you have replication, you have applications that are more important than others. So you need to configure quality of service, which via the MRSO product, we can go in, we can configure your routers for QoS, and with your portal view, you can go in and you can see how much data went into each queue. So you can get all of those statistics to make sure that you're getting positive hits on your QoS and that it's working. Also, we offer an additional service. It doesn't come with the base package, but there's NetFlow, which in the earlier slides, we saw what the utilization was on the interface, but you don't necessarily know, well, what application, what IP address was using that bandwidth. So with NetFlow, you can go in and you can see, this is just 2 screens of many that you can see, but you can see what your top applications were. You can see who your top conversations were, what IP was talking to who, and how many packets and utilization did that flow take. And you can drill into a specific date and time, a specific flow, and really get some detailed information to be able to troubleshoot and see what's going on your network. So that's really what MRSO is. We're just SDN, we support, we manage, we configure. We're responsible for repairing your hardware if it should fail. We'll do all that configuration for QoS, all of your routing needs. That's all SDN's responsibility with MRSO. Thanks.